Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. In my last podcast, I talked about how the upcoming report, the UAP report from the United States government, is basically bogus junk, and I stand by that claim because it is, no matter which way you look at it, and I'll explain. Now, the New York Times article that talked about this report that was supposed to be released on Monday, October 31st, it hasn't as of I'm recording this podcast on Monday evening. It's supposed to come out later this week now, they're saying. For some reason, it's been delayed. So basically, that New York Times article that I went through, that I talked about during the last podcast, pretty much downplayed the whole thing and said it had explanations for all of the objects, for most of the objects, and that the other ones, they don't think they're extraterrestrial at all, even though they had no explanation whatsoever. But it was really an effort by people within the Pentagon that don't want this information to get out, basically to get ahead of the report that's coming out. Now, there was another article that was published by the United Kingdom publication Daily Mail, and I'll leave a link for this article. It was published on the 31st of October. And they tell a different story. The way the information is presented about this upcoming classified report, it's presented in a different way. You'll see the difference here. Like basically the headline for this is exclusive. New classified report to Congress says only half of UFO sightings can be properly explained, leaving nearly 200 mysteries unsolved, as critics say investigators glossed over unknown cases. Yeah, well, basically, that's what's going on here. There's you can see there's an effort going on between. There's two forces at play here. There's one force that wants to get this information out to the public, and there's a contingent within the Pentagon itself that's trying really hard to downplay this thing, and they don't want to talk about this in public. They want to keep telling people this goddamn lie. That's what they want. They can't help themselves. They don't want this information out to them. They want this information. It's their information. It's not up to the public. The public has no right to know, according to the Pentagon. The Pentagon feels there's no right for the people to know. So they don't want this information out. Don't be fooled, right? But even regardless, right? Regardless of the report itself, I'm going to get into this article in a minute here. Regardless of that the half of the sightings can't be properly explained, and that's what this article talks about here. Despite that, this report is a bunch of nonsense. They're still not telling the truth on this whole thing. They're not telling the people that there's an extraterrestrial presence here. They're withholding that. That's what they're doing. Okay, anyway, let's get into this article a little bit. Anyway, it says here, this was written by Josh Boswell for thedailymail.com. A classified report due to be sent to Congress Monday lists more than 150 cases of unexplained UFO encounters by military and government officials in the past year, sources told dailymail.com exclusively. The 22-page report, compiled by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, analyzes 366 cases, and only about half of them could be explained, two sources close to the department said. Examples include video shot by Reaper drones conducting surveillance in the Middle East that caught orbs flying around and suddenly bolting off the screen. Others, an ODNI source said, are similar to famous encounters by Navy F-18 fighter pilots who saw, filmed, and registered on radar tic-tac and gimbal-shaped craft flitting near training areas off the United States east and west coasts, moving at supersonic speeds and performing incredible maneuvers with no apparent means of propulsion. The G-forces from the sharp turns at eye-watering velocities were so extreme they would have crushed the skull of a human pilot trying to perform the same maneuver. Some cases had explanations as mundane as weather balloons, but among these are brand new surveillance by foreign adversaries, the source said, including Chinese spy drones trying to gather information on U.S. military pilot training. A public version of the report, stripped of classified information, is due to be published by ODNI Monday, but sources say both the classified and unclassified versions have been delayed by a few days. The UFO dossier is the debut of an annual report mandated by last year's National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, part of a slew of new legislation forcing more government transparency on unexplained phenomena in our airspace and seas. The 366 cases sources described in the classified report represent a large increase from the 144 covered in a preliminary assessment published last year by the ODNI. The June 2021 dossier said one case had been explained as a balloon, and of the remaining 143 unexplained cases dated between 2004 and 2021, 80 reports involved observation with multiple sensors. All cases came from United States government sources. Members of the intelligence community who are eager for the government to address the issue of unexplained craft in our skies were disappointed by the report's focus on cases investigators were able to solve. They're patting themselves on the back that they've resolved over half of them, the ODNI source said. But we don't give a crap about the ones they've resolved. Yeah, there's balloons up there, and balloons are sometimes mistaken for UAP, but there are S-loads of classified videos that are pretty profound and pretty clear. They don't want to talk about this stuff because they really, really don't know what the hell they are. That's the truth. The classified report has been sent to the Armed Services, Appropriations, Foreign Affairs or Relations, and Intelligence Committees of the House and Senate. The 2022 NDAA, signed into law last December, requires the government to release a public report on UFO incidents each year by October 31st, with a classified annex sent to only lawmakers with security clearance. But sources told DailyMail.com that ODNI instead wrote a single classified report and is running a few days behind schedule, delivering it to Congress and creating a public declassified version. The ODNI source said there are dozens of classified UFO videos on government servers filmed at MQ-9 Reaper drones abroad. These drones operate 20 to 25,000 feet up in the air, and they're flying around. We're keeping an eye on bad guys all over the world, they said. An operator will be zoomed in looking at a town in Syria, and all of a sudden a little orb will go flying through the viewfinder. The operator's like, what the hell? And so he starts focusing on it and just watches the orb for a while. We might get it for 30 seconds. We might watch it for 10 minutes. And then it will do something remarkable, like suddenly bolt off the screen. One tape seen by the source shows a UFO diving into the ocean without making a splash. There's some pretty spectacular videos, they said. The ODNI source was critical of their department's dossier, saying it glossed over the many intriguing and worrying unexplained cases. It was not as detailed as you might hope. It spent a lot of time jumping into the foreign surveillance that was discovered, which has nothing to do with UAP, the source said. There's a lot of attention to that and just about nothing about the other 49% that were not resolved. Ryan Graves, one of the Navy F-18 pilots who encountered gimbal-shaped objects pulling high-gravity turns and showing no propulsion heat signature on infrared cameras, tweeted on Friday about the danger of ignoring such cases. Expect to continue seeing periodic attempts to cling to the social high ground used to mock those who broach the topic of UAP, Graves said. Conclusive commentary on UAP undermines national security, aviation safety, and common sense. It's okay to be wrong. Ignoring the issue is not acceptable. Now we're just going to stop there for a second and see, this is what's going on here. There's a group in the Pentagon that's trying to withhold this information from the public. From the public. It's bad enough that they're withholding the whole truth, but here we have this slow disclosure going on, right? And now they're focused on they're trying to that New York Times story, which focused on the air clutter and Chinese spy drones, right? They focused on that and just really pretty much disregarded the rest. And there was a few comments thrown in there from anonymous sources saying, we're absolutely certain that those things we couldn't explain they're not extraterrestrial. Like, that makes absolutely zero sense. And now here you have an article that's basically hitting back against what the New York Times did last week. But it's a shame that it's come to this. It's a shame that we're in this situation in the first place. Again, even the report that's going to get released later on this week, it's not really telling the whole story. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Okay, but at the same time, you have it's sad to see that there are elements within the Pentagon that are trying to get ahead of that report and try to downplay the whole thing for some reason. I don't know why, but they don't. It seems like they want to pull back for some reason. I've been saying this. Anyway, let's continue with this article a little bit. The ODNI source said the classified report promised lawmakers better data in future due to improved systems for military personnel to report UFO incidents and a more proactive approach from the recently revamped UFO task force, which operates out of the office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. We didn't go out searching for them. We accidentally stumbled into them, the informant told dailymail.com. Now they're actually creating collection plans to go out and try to learn more for the first time. That's something that's been happening just in the last 6 months. We're probably seeing a 5 a month, maybe a 10 a month, maybe 10 a month. In a single report, you might have 10 incidents. There was a section that said that because this effort is growing, future reports would be vastly more detailed and contain much more data. I am hopeful I am more hopeful than not that we're heading in the right direction. The news comes after NASA announced its own team of 16 experts who will begin an unidentified aerial phenomena study lasting 9 months. All right. And then it talks about the 2023 NDAA, which is they're going to be voting on soon, the Congress. And once that gets passed, that will give whistleblower protection to officials. But anyway, I'll leave the link for this article. So you could check it out for yourself. But again, this article is like a night and day of what the difference between this article and the New York Times article from last week is like night and day. So now for this article, Daily Mail got their own anonymous source that's commenting with a different kind of viewpoint on this whole thing. So last week in the New York Times had some anonymous sources who were saying things like, "Oh well, yeah, it's all explainable. We pretty much there's nothing really to see here. Not much going on, basically, and the stuff that we don't know about was definitely not extraterrestrials, even though we have no idea what they are." That was what the New York Times article was saying in a nutshell. And now you have this one saying, yeah, actually, no, there's some of them that they discovered, but half of them, 50% of these cases, there's 200, we don't have no idea what they are. And, it's like totally different. Two different groups within the Pentagon apparently are fighting again on this whole thing. They're going in two different directions. One wants to continue to keep the secret from the public. The other one wants to continue with the slow disclosure. Because that's what it is. I mean, there is no question. We've talked about this 1,000 times. I mean, if you did your research on this, you would know that there's most certainly the government's been studying this for decades, since the late 40s, early 50s, and it's been kept secret from the public. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, and they know that it's extraterrestrial, but I mean, again, this is the way they're going about it with this slow disclosure. I don't agree with it. I think the Band-Aid needed to be pulled off. But what makes me upset is the fact that you see this group out there that's actually trying to pull back now, trying to make it look ridiculous again. Seems like they're trying to reinstall the stigma a little bit. Like, you must be crazy. Everything is flying beings from another planet. That's crazy talk. That's what it seems like to me. And you can see it all over social media. Is all like there's all the debunkers are out in mass over the last few days, making all sorts of bogus claims. Mick West is, I don't know, he must have lied like 50 to 100 times on his Twitter feed over the last 3 or 4 days, talking about how the gimbal is solved, it's all resolved, explained. Right? It's not explained. They still don't. What's the object? What is the object? It looks like a flying saucer to me. Right, but again, they're using that New York Times article, that phony New York Times article, that press release, that glorified Pentagon press release from last week. Right, they're using that as a springboard to basically, scream out their nonsense, their debunker claims, which have really they fall apart when you look at the evidence. They just completely fall apart. When you look at everything as a whole, none of the stuff they're talking about is true. These people are a bunch of liars, and they'll just say anything. They'll just keep throwing stuff until they think it sticks on the wall. Now, some of it, for some people, does stick on the wall. But the debunkers are out there in mass, and it's sad to see, and it's sad to see that we're. It seems like there's a fight going on right now. Now, hopefully, when the government, when the Congress finally passes the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act for 2023, and the president signs it, hopefully we'll see some people just say, you know what, I'm sick of this obfuscation and lying. Hopefully there's some people in the Pentagon who believe, hey, you know what, I'm bringing the proof to the public, and I don't care what the consequences are, because there should be no consequences. Now that if there's whistleblower protection, well, there should be no consequences. Just, hopefully this will end it. But, I just have reservations about it. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. The way things have been going for the last few days, ever since, since that New York Times article, it just seems, like we're being played with again. Like, it's like obvious to me, like obvious to anybody who studied UFOs and understands the cover up and understands that there's been a cover up, and it's not crazy talk to talk about a conspiracy in the case of UFOs, because there is a conspiracy. There's been one. I mean, if you studied this, you would know that. It's not, it's not rocket science, actually. I mean, it makes sense too. It's not like, there's actually proof to this phenomenon. I mean, we don't even need to go through it. I mean, there's actually proof to it. I mean, there's documentation. I mean, there's pictures, videos, testimony from tens of thousands of people over the years that have encountered these craft and beings, right? So, like, this is like, we're like being, again, I've been talking, this is like I feel like I've been saying the same thing for the last week and a half. Like, we're getting treated like kids, and it continues. It just continues. And it's disheartening. It really is disheartening.